This is my ranking of the best story games on PS5 that I've played, based purely on my personal experience. Each one is placed from masterpiece to trash depending on how strong the story is, how memorable the characters are, and how engaging the experience feels. Let's get straight into the list. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is a turn-based RPG where each year a mysterious paintress marks a number that causes everyone of that age to disappear. Expedition 33 travels across a dangerous land, mixing timed attacks, dodges, parries, and deep character builds with a powerful story. Then I realized the story was only getting stronger the longer I played. Every party member had a reason to keep moving, and I wanted to learn more about each of them. The combat kept me busy because every fight needed good timing instead of simple menu choices. I also liked trying different weapons, skills, and builds that changed how every character played. Several story moments caught me by surprise, and the emotional scenes stayed with me even after the credits rolled. The beautiful music and stunning locations made every chapter even better without distracting from the characters. I happily place this in the excellent tier. God of War Ragnarök is a cinematic action-adventure game where Kratos and Atreus travel across the Nine Realms as Ragnarok draws closer. It combines brutal combat, puzzle-solving, exploration, and Norse mythology with an emotional story about family, destiny, and sacrifice. Once I settled into the adventure, I cared about every conversation almost as much as every battle. Watching Kratos grow into a calmer father while Atreus searched for his own path made every chapter stronger. The combat stayed exciting because switching weapons, blocking, and parrying kept every fight active, while the huge boss battles felt unforgettable. I also spent plenty of time exploring side areas since many of them added extra character moments instead of simple rewards. The music, voice acting, and visuals worked together so well that several scenes stayed in my mind long after I finished playing. I have no doubt this belongs in the masterpiece tier. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is an action RPG where Cloud and his companions travel across a vast world while chasing Sephiroth and uncovering dangerous secrets. Real-time combat, party teamwork, exploration, and countless side activities support a story about friendship, loss, destiny, and hope. As I moved through every region, the adventure kept surprising me with memorable character moments instead of only big battles. Cloud, Tifa, Aerith, Barrett, and the rest all received enough time to grow, making later scenes hit much harder. I enjoyed switching between characters because each one fought differently, and combining abilities made every encounter more enjoyable. The music lifted emotional scenes, the beautiful landscapes rewarded exploration, and even the mini-games offered welcome breaks without hurting the main story. A few sections felt longer than needed, yet the emotional payoff made the journey worthwhile. My pick for this game is the Great tier. Cyberpunk 2077 is an open-world action RPG where players explore Night City as V, a mercenary searching for a way to survive after a dangerous mission changes everything. Gunplay, hacking, stealth, cyberware upgrades, and player choices shape both combat and the unfolding story. Once I settled into Night City, I found myself caring more about the people than the missions. The relationship between V and Johnny Silverhand kept changing, and I liked how their conversations added tension while pushing the story forward. I enjoyed mixing guns, hacking, and stealth because every mission could be handled in different ways. The side quests surprised me the most since many introduced memorable characters and emotional moments that stayed with me long after they ended. Night City looked incredible, especially at night, and the music matched every major scene perfectly. Even with a few small glitches, I would place this in the excellent tier. Death Stranding Director's Cut is an action-adventure game where every delivery across a ruined America helps reconnect isolated communities. Careful route planning, cargo management, traversal tools, stealth, and survival mechanics work together while an emotional story explores connection, loss, and hope. As I spent more time making deliveries, I realized every journey had a purpose beyond reaching the next destination. Crossing mountains, rivers, and dangerous areas felt rewarding because every new tool made travel easier without removing the challenge. I also enjoyed how the quiet moments allowed the story and characters to breathe instead of rushing from one action scene to another. The soundtrack arrived at perfect times, turning simple walks into unforgettable memories, while the beautiful landscapes kept me looking around instead of only following the objective. Even though some boss fights felt less interesting than the rest of the adventure, they never stopped me from enjoying the experience. I'm happy to place this in the excellent tier. Baldur's Gate 3 is a turn-based RPG where a mysterious parasite threatens your mind while a group of unlikely companions searches for a cure. Player choices, tactical combat, exploration, dice rolls, and deep character interactions shape both the story and the world around you. As I kept making decisions, I realized almost every choice changed something, whether it affected a companion, a quest, or an entire area. I loved getting to know the party because every character had their own struggles, and their personal stories became just as important as the main plot. The combat rewarded planning instead of rushing, and I enjoyed finding creative ways to win difficult battles with different spells and abilities. I also appreciated how every playthrough could unfold differently, making the adventure worth experiencing again. The writing, voice acting, and freedom made every hour memorable and constantly surprised me. I have no doubt this belongs in the masterpiece tier. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is an open-world action-adventure where Peter Parker and Miles Morales protect New York while facing powerful new enemies threatening the city. Fast web-swinging, exciting combat, character abilities, exploration, and emotional storytelling combined to create a superhero adventure filled with memorable moments. I enjoyed switching between Peter and Miles because each hero brought different abilities and personality to every mission. The movement felt even smoother than before, making it hard to stop swinging across the city instead of following the next objective. The combat stayed fun by adding new powers and creative attacks, while the boss fights delivered exciting action without feeling repetitive. I also liked how the story balanced emotional character moments with spectacular set pieces, keeping me invested until the ending. New York looked beautiful from every angle, and exploring the city never became boring. I'm happy to place this in the excellent tier. Alan Wake 2 is a survival horror game where writer Alan Wake and FBI agent Saga Anderson investigate terrifying mysteries linked to a supernatural darkness. Exploration, puzzle solving, careful resource management, and tense combat support a psychological story that constantly blurs the line between reality and fiction. I was drawn into the mystery almost immediately because every chapter answered one question while creating several more. Switching between Alan and Saga kept the story fresh, and I enjoyed how both characters slowly uncovered different pieces of the same puzzle. The atmosphere stayed tense from beginning to end, with eerie locations, clever lighting, and outstanding sound design making every step feel uncertain. Combat was satisfying without becoming the main focus, allowing the investigation and storytelling to shine instead. I also loved how the game mixed live-action scenes with gameplay in creative ways that felt completely natural. This is an excellent tier game. Silent Hill 2 is a survival horror game where James Sunderland travels to the fog-covered town after receiving a mysterious letter from his late wife. Careful exploration, challenging puzzles, tense combat, and psychological storytelling combine to create an unforgettable journey through fear, guilt, and loss. As I explored the empty streets and abandoned buildings, the constant feeling of unease never disappeared. Every location felt disturbing because the atmosphere, sound design, and lighting worked together to keep me nervous. I enjoyed solving the clever puzzles since they made me pay attention to every clue instead of rushing forward. The combat felt much stronger than I expected, with every fight carrying enough danger to make even common enemies threatening. James was an interesting character whose emotional struggles became clearer as the story unfolded, making the ending even more powerful. I'm placing this in the great tier. The Last of Us Part 1 is an action-adventure game where Joel must escort a young girl named Ellie across a dangerous post-apocalyptic America. Stealth, survival, exploration, crafting, and intense combat support an emotional story about loss, hope, and the bonds that grow between unlikely companions. As I spent more time traveling with Joel and Ellie, their relationship became the reason I wanted to keep playing. Every conversation, quiet moment, and difficult decision added more weight to the journey, making the emotional scenes even more powerful. The combat stayed tense because resources were limited, forcing me to think carefully before every encounter instead of charging forward. I also loved exploring abandoned locations filled with small details that made the ruined world feel believable. The outstanding performances, unforgettable story, and incredible atmosphere stayed with me long after the credits finished rolling. I have no doubt this belongs in the masterpiece tier. Persona 3 Reload is a turn-based RPG where a group of high school students fight supernatural creatures during a hidden hour after midnight. Dungeon exploration, Persona fusion, social activities, and strategic battles all work together to tell an emotional coming-of-age story. I loved how every in-game day gave me something important to do, whether I was building friendships, studying, or preparing for another trip into Tartarus. I found myself constantly thinking about which personas to create because experimenting with different abilities made every battle more satisfying. Pulling off all-out attacks after discovering enemy weaknesses never stopped being fun, and I always looked forward to unlocking stronger options. The stylish menus, incredible soundtrack, and emotional story kept me invested from beginning to end, while several major story moments completely caught me off guard. Even though Tartarus sometimes felt longer than I wanted, I still couldn't wait to jump back in. This goes into the great tier. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth is a turn-based RPG where Ichiban Kasuga travels to Hawaii searching for his birth mother before an unexpected adventure pulls him into a much bigger conflict. Strategic combat, exploration, side activities, and an emotional story combined with the series' signature humor to create an unforgettable experience. I loved how the game constantly surprised me because every chapter introduced something I never expected. The turn-based combat stayed engaging since I was always thinking about positioning, different jobs, and the best attacks to use instead of repeating the same moves. I found myself getting completely distracted by side content because every minigame and sub-story felt worth my time, especially when they mixed hilarious moments with surprisingly emotional ones. I also enjoyed spending hours on Dondoko Island without even touching the main story. There was always something new waiting around the next corner. I would place this in the great tier. A Plague Tale Requiem is an action-adventure game where Amicia desperately searches for a cure for her younger brother Hugo while a deadly plague spreads across medieval France. Stealth, survival, puzzles, and light-based mechanics come together with an emotional story filled with danger and heartbreaking choices. I became deeply invested in Amicia and Hugo because every chapter made me want to protect them no matter what happened next. I loved how stealth encouraged me to think carefully before acting, while every new tool gave me more creative ways to escape impossible situations. The atmosphere constantly kept me on edge, and the incredible sound design made quiet moments just as tense as the action. I also couldn't stop exploring because every location looked beautiful, despite hiding so much tragedy. The emotional ending stayed with me long after I finished the game. I'm happy to place this in the excellent tier. Red Dead Redemption 2 is an open-world action-adventure where outlaw Arthur Morgan struggles to keep the Vanderlyn gang together as their way of life slowly falls apart. Gunfights, exploration, hunting, survival systems, and an emotional story blend together in an incredibly detailed world. I completely lost myself in this world because there was always something worth discovering, even when I ignored the main story for hours. I loved how Arthur slowly changed throughout the journey, and watching his character grow made every major moment hit even harder. I found myself caring about the gang, my horse, and even random strangers because the world felt so alive and believable. The quiet conversations around camp, unforgettable missions, and breathtaking landscapes made every chapter memorable. By the time the story reached its final moments, I was completely invested and didn't want it to end. I have no doubt this belongs in the masterpiece tier. Judgment is an action-adventure detective game that follows private investigator Takayuki Yagami as he investigates a string of mysterious murders while navigating Kamurocho's dangerous criminal underworld. Investigations, courtroom drama, exploration, and fast-paced combat work together to create a story packed with suspense and unexpected revelations. I couldn't stop chasing the next clue because every investigation uncovered another layer of the mystery. I loved switching between detective work and stylish combat since both felt equally rewarding throughout the adventure. Yagami quickly became one of my favorite protagonists thanks to his confidence, intelligence, and determination. I also spent plenty of time exploring Kamurocho because the side cases and activities added even more personality to the experience. Every major reveal kept raising the stakes, and I was completely invested until the credits rolled. I have no doubt this belongs in the great tier. Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy is a single-player action-adventure where Star-Lord leads his unpredictable team after a routine mission unleashes a galaxy-threatening crisis. Third-person combat, team abilities, exploration, and dialogue choices come together with a heartfelt story full of humor and unforgettable moments. I smiled through almost the entire adventure because the conversations between the Guardians never stopped making me laugh. I loved how every character felt important, and watching them slowly become a real family made the emotional scenes hit much harder. The combat stayed exciting because I was constantly combining everyone's abilities instead of fighting alone. I also spent extra time exploring every area since there were always fun conversations, hidden collectibles, or small details waiting to be discovered. By the final chapter, I genuinely didn't want to say goodbye to this crew because I had grown so attached to them. I'm placing this in the excellent tier. Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut tells the story of Samurai Jin Sakai as he returns to Iki Island to confront a dangerous new enemy while facing painful memories from his past. Open world exploration, precise sword combat, stealth, and cinematic storytelling create an adventure that constantly rewards curiosity and skill. I loved how every duel demanded patience, because winning always depended on timing instead of button mashing. Exploring the island never became repetitive, since I was constantly discovering shrines, hidden paths, and rewarding side stories. Jin's personal struggles made the story even more memorable, and I found myself caring about his choices far more than I expected. The breathtaking landscapes, incredible soundtrack, and satisfying combat kept pulling me back even when I planned to stop playing. I have no doubt this belongs in the masterpiece tier. Life is Strange Double Exposure follows photographer Max Caulfield as a friend's murder awakens a new supernatural power that lets her travel between two parallel timelines. Narrative choices, investigation, exploration, and puzzle-solving work together to unravel a mystery shaped by relationships and difficult decisions. I was excited to play as Max again because she still felt like the same thoughtful character I remembered. I loved switching between the two timelines since every conversation and clue could completely change depending on where I was. Reading messages, exploring every corner, and learning more about the characters made the mystery even more engaging. While the final chapters weren't as strong as the opening, I still enjoyed uncovering the truth and seeing how everything connected. The emotional moments, excellent performances, and beautiful soundtrack reminded me why I enjoy this series so much. This easily earns a place in the great tier. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 recreates medieval Bohemia with an incredible level of historical detail, placing Henry in the middle of political unrest where every choice can shape his future. Realistic combat, survival mechanics, exploration, and deep role-playing systems create an adventure unlike most fantasy RPGs. I quickly realized this wasn't trying to be a fantasy RPG, and that made me appreciate it even more. Every decision felt important because the world reacted to my actions in believable ways, making me think carefully before accepting quests or breaking the law. I also enjoyed watching Henry grow as I improved my skills, learned new combat techniques, and slowly earned the trust of the people around me. Exploring the countryside was incredibly rewarding since every village, forest, and castle felt like it belonged in that period of history. This easily earns a place in the excellent tier. Metaphor ReFantazio builds a fantasy kingdom caught in political conflict, where an unlikely hero enters a royal tournament to decide the next ruler. Turn-based battles, class customization, dungeon exploration, and time management come together in a JRPG that constantly rewards careful planning. I loved experimenting with different archetypes because every new combination opened fresh ways to approach battles. Managing my limited time became surprisingly addictive since every choice felt valuable, whether I was strengthening friendships or preparing for the next dungeon. The story kept surprising me with memorable twists, and I was always eager to see what would happen after each major event. Even after dozens of hours, the world, characters, and strategic combat kept me fully invested, despite the adventure feeling a little longer than necessary near the end. This deserves a place in the excellent tier. Firewatch places you alone in the Wyoming wilderness as Henry, a newly hired fire lookout whose quiet summer slowly turns into something far more unsettling. First-person exploration, natural conversations, and environmental storytelling create an adventure built around isolation, trust, and human connection rather than traditional gameplay. I loved wandering through the forests because every trail, lookout, and quiet moment felt peaceful while still making me wonder what was waiting ahead. Talking with Delilah became the highlight of my adventure, and I found myself looking forward to every radio conversation we shared. Their chemistry felt natural, making both characters easy to care about as the story unfolded. Even though the mystery didn't completely satisfy me by the end, the emotional journey, beautiful scenery, and memorable writing stayed with me long after I finished. This deserves a spot in the great tier. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt Complete Edition throws Geralt of Rivia into a sprawling fantasy adventure where the search for Ciri unfolds across kingdoms torn apart by war, monsters, and political conflict. Open-world exploration, monster hunting, meaningful choices, and rich storytelling come together in one of the most complete RPG experiences available. I loved how every quest felt carefully written because even the smallest side stories carried memorable characters and unexpected outcomes. Riding across the world never became repetitive since I was always finding hidden contracts, treasures, or villages with stories worth uncovering. The combat, crafting, and character progression kept me experimenting with different builds throughout my adventure. Returning to the PS5 version made everything look even better while keeping everything I already loved about the original. This deserves nothing less than the Masterpiece tier. That's where they all ended up in my ranking. Great stories aren't just about the ending, they're about the characters and moments you remember long afterward. Thanks for watching.